Welcome to Satsang. And on such a beautiful and auspicious day, this beautiful day of Dhanteras, for our family joining us from all over the world who may not know what this beautiful day is. It's a day traditionally where people go out, sort of a day of prosperity, a day of wealth. People go out and they buy gold. They buy new things, new pots, new utensils. It's a day of abundance. Recognizing abundance, celebrating the abundance. It's also the day in which we worship and we celebrate the father of Ayurveda, Dhanvantari. And as I was saying on the banks of Ganga, it's such a beautiful teaching that our health is actually our real wealth. Most people have learned this before, but the last year of COVID year and a half, made it so obvious. Didn't matter how much money you had. You couldn't buy another breath. So many people around the world were spending their last dollar, euro, rupee, just for another breath. We realize you can't. There's no amount of money you can spend. And so I love the weaving together of both aspects on this beautiful day. So a happy Dhanteras to everybody. A very prosperous and abundant year. But prosperous and abundant in a way that's real prosperity and real abundance. Which, of course, we know doesn't come in our pots and pans or bricks of gold. But that real abundance. And as always, we start with a question that's come from our global family, joining us from around the world, and then open it up to any questions that anyone here may have. And I'm particularly partial to our younger satsang comers. So if you have questions, you'll be the first. If you don't, no problem, no pressure, but you should know if you do, you're first. I'll call on you first. How do we train the mind to do the things even it doesn't want to do? So it's a very interesting situation when you say, my mind doesn't want to do that. Because it implies that there's actually two different beings inside of ourselves, right? I want to get up early, let's say. Let's just take an example. It's a common one. I want to get up early. My mind wants to sleep till noon. I want to live a more sattvic life, a more spiritual life, but the mind says, nay, let's go to the party. Right? But who is that then? I mean, if you say I want to live the sattvic life, but the mind wants to go to the parties, wants to go out and get drunk, wants to just, eat, drink, and be merry, sleep till noon. Well, who is that? And it's important to know, because if we're going to try to convince it to do something that it doesn't want to do, we have to know a little bit about who it is and where it came from. So the mind does not actually have a mind of its own. A lot of us speak about our minds as though it literally were an entirely different being. Like there's me, and then there's my mind. And we're going to try to peacefully cohabit in here, but as though it's two people. And it isn't. What is our mind? Our mind is simply the sum total. It keeps changing, of course, but at the moment it's the total of the impressions that have been put upon it. Whether from past lives, from earlier this life, things I've seen, I've experienced, the culture I'm from. So for example, let's say that my mind says, "Hey, don't worry about meditation, forget it. Let's just go to parties and, enjoy ourselves." Well, that's going to be an impression upon the mind from perhaps samskaras of a past life, or perhaps something as simple as the TV serials that we watch, where everybody seems to be having such a great time at the parties. They look like they're having such a great time at the bars, at the clubs, staying out all night, getting drunk, taking drugs. And you watch it enough, it creates a samskara, an impression upon the mind. Maybe we follow some influencers on social media who we think are really great. And maybe they're always posting pictures of themselves at parties, or themselves really drunk, or, rolling out of bed at noon. It makes an impression. Then we say, well, my mind wants to do these things. No, it's just that I've put these impressions upon my mind. The mind is not bad or wrong in some sort of inherent way. It absorbs. It's like a sponge. And it absorbs what we give to it. The experiences, the sights, the sounds, what type of music we listen to, the people we hang out with. Do we hang out with people who are always saying, "Arey yaar, that was a great party last night. My God, mujhe kuch bhi yaad nahi hai. Bade maza aa gaya." Well, that's going to make an impression. Oh, that's what's fun. Okay. And this is why spiritually we talk about the importance of the power of association. When we speak about satsang, so here in this circumstance, it's us being in the presence of truth together as we deep dive into these topics. But satsang also refers simply to those you hang out with. Is it an association of truth? And this is why it's so important to pick and choose who your friends are, who you're spending time with, what TV shows you watch, what music you listen to, who you follow on social media. Because we may think, it's harmless. What difference does it make? Well, it's harmless as in you're not going to die from it. But it's changing the nature of your brain. And so when we start to think about how to convince the mind to do something, well, you're never going to convince the mind. Who's talking in there? That's the dilemma with the mind, is it always knows what you're planning. Think about it. If you say, okay, today I'm going to convince my mind. Well, who's hearing you say that? yourself? The mind, right? I mean, if I'm saying today I'm going to show my mind, well, guess who you just gave a heads up to? Right? It's like a child saying to the mom or the dad, just giving you a heads up, I'm going downstairs to eat all the chocolate chip cookies before dinner. Well, obviously the mom or the dad is going to say, not so fast. No, you're not. Which is why kids by nature tend not to mention in advance that they're planning to eat all the chocolate chip cookies before dinner. With the mind, though, we can't escape. You can't plan and plot of what you're going to do with the mind without the mind knowing it, without the ego knowing it. And that's where our best efforts fail. Because just as we are about to convince the mind sincerely of the benefits of getting up early, of praying, of living a sattvic life, the mind has already worked out its counter-defense. In some cases, it even preempts us. They'll see somebody meditating or somebody not going out, and the mind will say, what a waste of a life. Look how bored that person looks. What a loser. Just to preempt the attack that we're about to give on the mind about no longer doing those things. And so this is where convincing the mind isn't really ever about convincing the mind or making the mind do something. It's all about simple patterns. It's much simpler than it sounds. If you think that you really have to convince or force the mind to do something, then you've set yourself up for a really difficult task, because the mind is a great adversary. You have created it throughout your life. You have fed it, you have molded it. And now it's there ready to be this embodiment of everything you have fed it. So it knows exactly how to get you. Today you want to end up like your grandmother, it'll say. It knows exactly where to get you. And this is where the way to, as the question says, convince the mind to do things it doesn't want to do, is don't worry about convincing the mind. Convince the body. The mind doesn't actually do anything. The mouth does it, the hands do it, the legs do it. You simply need to lay new patterns. You want to live a sattvic life? Set an alarm early in the morning, put the alarm across the room, and force your body, not the mind, the body, to get up and walk across the room. Once you're up and across the room, you're 90% there. It's the clock right next to the bed that you can just keep hitting that's the undoing of everyone. You want to live a more sattvic life? Set a system. What you are going to do. Lay new patterns. Lay new habits. And at the same time, give your mind new ways of thinking. This is one of the great powers of our mantra jap, is when our mind, by nature, by habit, is, let's say, gossiping or criticizing or negative, either about other people or about yourself. Well, instead of trying to convince it that it's wrong, and then you end up fighting both sides of a battle, you're like the people in those shows where one person plays every role. Instead of that, you actually just give the mind something else to do. You've got your mantra. And you give it new ways of being. Are you negative? Okay. Well, think of new things that you can say. Think of practices every single time you meet someone. the very first thing you have to do is think of 3 wonderful things about them. Little things. Start a gratitude practice, whatever it may be. Just start. Do not give the patterns of your mind the power and the respect of actually trying to engage in a debate with them. That just emphasizes the idea that it is its own separate thing. It's just patterns. It's patterns of chemistry, patterns of electricity. We call them thoughts. The moment it arises, just give it a new thought. Try this for a moment. I want all of you in your mind right now to just say, stop. Okay? In your own mind, just say stop really loud. Say it over and over again. Inside your mind. Can you hear it? Okay, you can open your eyes. Did everybody hear it? Is there anyone who could not hear the word stop in your own mind? Of course, we can all hear it. Now, what that shows us is we actually do have control over what goes on in our mind. Okay, close your eyes again. Start counting down from 100 by threes. Okay, so 100, 97, 94, 91. Now you keep going. I'm not going to do the rest for you. Keep going. Okay, stop. Open your eyes. Is there anyone who couldn't do it? Not the math part, but the attention part. We all could do it. So we actually do have control over our minds. You tell it to do something, it does something. You shout in it, we hear it. You give it a math problem, it'll sort it out. The dilemma is that most of the time we are not conscious. And this is where consciousness is so important. Because when we want our minds to do something that they're not patterned to do, we're going to change the question a bit. The question said something the mind doesn't want to do. But I'm going to change that. Because the mind doesn't really have a mind of its own. The mind is just patterns. So we're going to change it to do something that the mind is not patterned to do. We simply lay new patterns. But in order to do that, we have to be conscious and aware, because the moment we go on autopilot, the mind goes back to its old ways. So the very best way to do what you want, regardless of the patterns of your mind, is to stay conscious, to stay aware, to stay mindful, and just quite literally to do them. And to work with the mind through mantra, through techniques, through mindfulness, through meditation, so that it doesn't run off on its own onto autopilot. And this is what discipline is. This is all the disciplines, is just to train us to repattern the mind. The good news is, when I was studying neurology 26, 27, 28, 29 years ago, we thought that once you hit late adolescence, once the brain had finally myelinized, meaning that the sheaths that surround the axons in the brain, once that finally happened, that the brain no longer could be changed, that was sort of the final step in the solidification of the brain. And it typically happens around late adolescence. So the running theme in neurology and psychoneurology at that time was, can't change the brain after late adolescence or early 20s. The best you can do is give it medicine. You're depressed, here's a pill. You're anxious, here's a pill. You've got an addiction, here's a pill. Because we can't do anything else. The brain is set. Fortunately, over the last few decades, the science of neurology has actually come about a full 180 degrees. We now know that basically everything you do changes your brain. If you're used to wearing shoes and you suddenly start to go barefoot for a week, your brain will actually change. If you take these two fingers and you tape them together for a week, your brain will change. If you take your arm, let's say you're right-handed, and you take your arm, don't bother breaking it. Just take it, stick it in a sling. So you can't use it for a week. Your brain will change. Spend a week starting to learn a foreign language, a language you don't already speak. Your brain will change. And I don't just mean temporarily, not like alcohol or drugs or adrenaline changes it momentarily. But actually it will start to change in a semi-permanent to permanent way. This is why people who, for example, broke their dominant hand when they were kids and had their right hand, let's say, in a cast for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and had to do everything with their left hand, when they're 40, 50, 60 years old, they're still much more ambidextrous than others. That which happened for 6 weeks, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, changed the brain in a way that it stays with them forever. So our brains can keep changing. But we have to do something to make them change. So don't bother with the fingers or the feet. I mean, it changes, but not in useful ways. Start changing your brain in useful ways. Through changing how you live. Changing your habits. It's hard at first. A habit is a habit. Just like it's hard to start writing with your left hand when you break your right one. But eventually it happens. And then those new habits, those new ways of being, stay with you. So, if anyone here has any questions, do you have a question? Do you have something to say? What do you think? Should we come back to you? Want another few minutes? Work up the energy? Good. Okay. Done. Are there any other questions here? Okay, we'll come back to you. In the meantime, I'll take another one that's come from our global family. What should we be thinking when we are in the presence of a god or goddess in the temple? Beautiful. Well, there's no one right answer to this. There's a lot of wrong answers. Meaning, you shouldn't be making a shopping list. Puja Swamiji always says that we isht ke paas list leke jate hain. That we go to sit in front of God in the temple, but we go with our shopping lists. Give me this, give me that, do this, I want that. So, when we are in the temple, or the church, or the mosque, or the gurdwara, or the synagogue, or wherever we pray. Wherever we are in the presence of the divine. Ideally, we are thinking of nothing. Ideally, the mind is as still and quiet as possible so that that divine presence and that divine voice can actually flow through and be with us. As quiet as the mind can be is the ideal. But sometimes our mind isn't able to be quite that quiet. So what do we think about? Well, there's a lot of good options. First of all, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, God. Thank you is a beautiful way to be with the divine. Thank you. Thank you, God, for this life. Thank you for this moment. Thank you for the opportunity that I have to be this beautiful, beautiful instrument of you here on earth. Another beautiful thing to think about is, I love you. I love you, God. I love you. Not because I want you to do something for me, not because I'm buttering you up, but just I love you. Maybe I love you in the form, a certain form. Maybe I just love you formlessly, but I love you. Another beautiful thing to think about is surrender. God, please, show me the way. Show me the way to be able to live this life in the fullest, highest, deepest, truest way, so that every minute and every moment becomes prayer. Let me live in love as love, in truth as truth. Let me never get distracted. Doesn't mean I can't have a good time. By all means, have a good time. But even while I'm having a good time, may I never be distracted from you. In fact, may being connected to you make me have an even better time. You love the sunsets even more. You love the stars even more. You love your loved ones even more. Because you see in the loved ones the presence of the divine. So that's another beautiful thing to think about. Another one, lastly, would be, this is one of my personal favorites, is, oh God, empty me. Just empty me. Empty me of all of that is blocking me from being this channel for your presence here on earth. Empty me of the ego. Empty me of identities. Empty me of the games of my mind. Empty me of desires, of expectations. Just empty me. So, those are 4 different things to think about. I'm sure there's many others, but just don't make shopping lists. Don't think about what you're going to cook for dinner tonight. Don't think about who you're angry at. Don't go to God with petty complaints. But in the presence of God, realize that all of those petty complaints mean nothing. So, do you have a question? Does she have one? Ah.
That's what is running in his mind.
Ah, okay. Beautiful. Well, you know what's beautiful about that? You know what's great about that? When you are, come here. So this is a wonderful lesson. Do your mom or dad or family members, do they ever do upwas? Do you ever hear them have fasting days? Do you know? Do they ever observe fast? Kabhi upwas karte hain?
No.
Okay. So a lot of times, lots of people observe fast. Means whole day they don't eat. Why? Because it allows them to be very light and to sit closer. Upwas means sitting near to. Near to whom? Near to God. Now, here's why it's a beautiful practice. When you feel hungry, what happens? Where do you feel hungry? Does your finger feel hungry? Bhook kahan lagti hai? How do you know if you're hungry? Does your nose feel hungry?
No.
Where do you feel hungry then? Where do you feel it? Your elbow? Yeah? यहाँ भूख लगती है?
नहीं.
नहीं. कहाँ भूख लगती है? भूख कहाँ लगती है? कहाँ महसूस होती है? कैसे मालूम है कि भूख लग रही है? जब लगती है तो कैसे मालूम? कोई आकाश से आए कि अच्छा तुम भूख लगती है, कोई आके बताया? नहीं. So how do you know if you are hungry? What do you think? कैसे मालूम? Do you feel it in your tummy? You feel it in your tummy? Yeah. And sometimes it makes sounds.
No.
No? Mine makes sounds when I'm hungry. It means they must not let you get very hungry. It's good. When you get very hungry, then it starts to make sounds. It starts to move around a little bit, make noises. Then you know, oh, khub bhook lag rahi. I'm very hungry now. But here's why people observe fast. Because when that happens, when the stomach and then the mind says, oh, I'm very hungry, most of the time, what do? Jaake kha lete. We go and eat. Acha bhook lag rahi, chalo kha lo kuch. We go and we eat something. But if I am fasting, if I've made a decision ki aaj mera upwas hai, today is my fast. Maybe we fast for Shiva, maybe we fast for Hanumanji, maybe we fast for the Guru, maybe we fast for so many different reasons, Ekadashi. But when I have decided to fast, no matter how much my stomach is growling, no matter how much my mind says I'm hungry, I don't eat. And you know what's great about that? That nothing happens. Most of the time we think if I'm hungry right now, I must eat something. Like right now, if you feel hungry, मन क्या कहते हैं? क्या कहते हैं मन? What does your mind say?
If I'm somewhere out, let's say 6 feet. Wait for some time.
It says wait for some time. Okay, well you have a very patient mind. You have a very good mind. Most people's mind when they are hungry says eat now. But you have a very patient mind, a very sattvic mind. That's wonderful. But when we don't eat, when we say wait for some time, it trains us not just to deal with hunger, but it trains us to deal with everything in life. In the same way. Does anyone in your family ever stay awake all night long for maybe Shivaratri, maybe Krishna Janmashtami, Maybe some other occasion? All night long?
No. But in my vacations, I sleep a little late.
Okay. Well, that's kind of like staying awake all night long. But when you sleep really late, when you go to sleep late, before you go to sleep, the mind is saying, I'm very tired, right? What is your normal bedtime?
Whenever Mama says.
Oh, wow. Beautiful.
Whenever Mama says I have to go.
That is beautiful. That is really beautiful. Okay. So, if Mama says you have to go, and then you know it's bedtime, but then let's say that you don't go right to sleep. You know you're feeling tired. The mind says, I want to sleep, but maybe for some reason, maybe you're traveling. But I bet you can just sleep in Mom or Dad's lap. But for other people, when we make a decision, I'm going to stay awake all night. It's Mahashivratri. It's Janmashtami. Or it's some other occasion. All night we're going to chant, we're going to meditate, we're going to pray. The mind says, sleep, 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 but we don't sleep. And what's so great about that is it teaches us that we are not slaves to our mind. Mind says eat, but I don't eat because it's my upvas. Mind says sleep, but I don't sleep because I have decided I'm going to meditate all night. The mind becomes very strong then because it learns, oh, I don't have to do what these instincts are. I don't have to do what just these thoughts or feelings are. So that's when we become very strong. And we learn, because sometimes in life our mind tells us things that we don't want to do. Somebody makes us angry, and there's a thought that comes in the mind that says, Main tapar maar dungi. Nay? You are so good. I love you. In most people's mind, sometimes that thought comes. Somebody does something to us and the mind says, I'm going to hit him. I will show him. But obviously we don't want to do that. We should never hit somebody, never hurt somebody. When we learn through fasting, even when we are hungry, through staying awake, even when we want to sleep, not every night, on very rare occasions. Otherwise, sleep is very good, food is very good. But on these rare occasions, it trains us that we don't have to do everything that the thoughts say. That's when our mind is very weak. But through doing all of this, it allows us to become very strong in the mind. So that later in our life, when the mind says, I'm going to hit somebody, or I'm going to steal, or I'm going to lie, or I'm going to do something wrong, we know, not going to do it. Many nishchit liya, I have made a decision. Many sankalp liya, I've taken a pledge. I will not lie. I will not harm. And then we become very strong in our minds. And that's why it's very good sometimes, when we feel hungry, that we wait some time. Maybe we wait a few minutes, maybe we wait a few hours. If it's our upvas, we wait a day. Don't worry, nobody's going to make you wait a day. But it's a very good way of training us. So whenever you want something in life, like maybe you want some sweet. Diwali is coming, right? Mind says, oh, I would like to have some sweet. So you know what a really good practice is? If you wait just a little bit of time before you eat the sweet. You can eat it, but not immediately. Maybe you wait 10 minutes. Maybe you wait half an hour. Just so that your mind gets strong, knows, oh, I really, really, really want it. But I don't have to eat it right now. I can wait. I'm strong.
I also wanted dollhouse, but I have to wait.
For dollars.
No,
Huh?
dollhouse.
Oh, dollhouse. I was like, what's she going to do with dollars? Dollhouse. You want a dollhouse?
Yeah. I wait.
You're waiting.
Yeah.
That's nice. Well, I bet when the dolls come to you, they're going to be very happy. And you know what? When you get the dollhouse, it's going to be even sweeter because you waited. Like the sweet that you wait for is even sweeter. The first food that you eat after upwas, after your fast, tastes even more beautiful. Lying down to sleep, even if you just get 2 hours because you have to go to work but you've been awake all night, that sleep is so sweet. So when you get that dollhouse, it's going to be so nice. And you know what? Aside from the dollhouse, it has trained your beautiful mind to be very strong and to be very patient and to wait. What do you think? Yeah?
Yeah.
So how long do you think you can wait for a dollhouse? What do you think? How long do you think you can wait?
Till I don't go to my new house.
Until you go to your new house. In your new house, you're getting a dollhouse.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that sounds like that's going to make you wait a little bit of time. That's a wonderful exercise. How long do you think you can wait till dinner?
So sometimes I have dance class. It ends very late, so I have to wait for.
Oh, for dinner.
Yeah.
So that's a wonderful exercise then. It's an exercise for the body and it's an exercise for the mind. You are getting wonderful training. Beautiful. Your mind is very beautiful. And as you grow, you're going to see how strong it is. Okay? Anything else? You sure?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, last. I am so sorry. I can't actually hear you.
As we know that nature recycles by itself, so how we recycle our mind? How we
Beautiful.
recycle our mind?
Can we start with this one tomorrow? This will be a perfect question to start with tomorrow. Okay? Wonderful. Wonderful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening. And a beautiful morning and day to our family all over the world. And so much love to you all. And happy Dhanteras.